time for Voice of Indie. Your hosts today are Beem Weeks, author, producer, and marketing monster for independent multimedia publisher Fresh Ink Group, and Stephen Gies, author, producer, composer, and publisher for Fresh Ink Group.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's time for another fun-filled hour, 90 minutes, whatever, of the Voice of Indie podcast. This is episode number 162, and I'm your host, Beem Weeks, and with me is my co-host, Stephen Gies. How you doing today, Stephen?
I'm doing fine. It's getting to be September, I hear.
Yeah.
At least you're not blowing up there like last week, huh?
Yeah, and it was, as a matter of fact, it was the day after that, all that everything happened. But yeah, we're looking at we had a pretty big torrential downpour here for the last 30 minutes or so, but it looks like it's stopped, and I'm seeing a nice little sunset out my window here, so fantastic.
Well, we've been busy getting together some new books to put out, and we're also getting forced over the coming weeks to take a look at our past catalog. We've got a catalog that goes back 27 years now. It's got about 250, 260, I think, ISBNs. The industry is shifting again. Back when we started this, we used to give 20% wholesale discounts to distributors on our print books, whereas the Simon & Schusters and the people who were printing piles of books were tending to give like 45, 50% discounts. And a lot of people thought that with independent booksellers, they weren't getting shelf space because of that, and that's not the reason. The reason was that they are print-on-demand books. They can get them anytime they want. They don't need to shelve them. And bookstores are no longer bookstores. There's a Books A Million here in Huntsville that's massive. This thing is huge. And I went in there and just to test it out, looked for Stephen King books. He had 3 copies of 2 titles of his books on the shelf. So when you can't get Stephen King books stocked, that means that they just need more room for puzzles, games, the delicatessen, the drink bar, and all that other stuff that they're putting in the bookstores now. So we kind of gave up on trying to get books on shelves unless you have a name like Stephen King, when even Stephen King can't do it. So we went with the low discount, go for making the money and emphasize online selling. Well, that 20% discount got changed to a minimum of 25 some years back, and then I think it was less than 2 years ago, it got changed to a minimum of 30. Now it's been announced that that minimum is going to 40% in October. And that margin is too small for us to make money on some of our books. So we're going to have to look at repricing some of our earlier publications. And that means republishing and new barcodes and just all kinds of work. So that's what we're looking at going toward in the near future here. And those of you who are independent booksellers are probably starting to hear this news. Those of you with Ingram Spark accounts, for example, probably already heard this week that you're going to have to start going to 40%. And for the first time, it's going to be retroactive. They're going to make us go back and do books that are already published. So that's what's going on in the independent bookselling industry, especially on print on demand. We're not real thrilled about it, but on the other hand, it is going to bring a little bit more parity between the independent book publishers and the Simon & Schusters of the world too. So we'll see how it plays out. But hey, 40% it's getting to be a big discount these days.
Yeah, everybody's raising this and raising that, and what are you gonna do? All right, I Won't Be Your Scapegoat by David Carroll. This is out now, so you can go to wherever you buy your books, and you can order this hardcover, softcover, ebook. This is a book of errors and misprints, misspelled words, and just funny little things that David Carroll finds on the internet. And there's also some photos of signs that he's seen as well. And these are funny. These are hilarious. We just had David on a couple weeks ago. This book, while Stephen and I were going through it in the publishing process, we sat there and we were laughing out loud. It is that funny. If you need a good laugh, grab your copy of Scapegoat. I Won't Be Your Scapegoat by David Carroll. It is out now. And if you want to be part of the show tonight, you got comments or questions, give us a call or use Twitter or X or whatever they call it. And here's how you can do that.
Call 516-453-9902 right now with your questions or comments for tonight's guest, or post a note on Twitter with hashtag Fresh Ink Group in the body of the tweet, and we'll read it on air. That's 516-453-9902 or hashtag Fresh Ink Group on Twitter.
All right, we've got another new book out. This is not in pre-sale. This is out now. Order your copy, get your copy. That's how it works out here now. It's called Celebrate 98, and it's a look at the 1998 Tennessee Volunteers College Football Champion season, which was the season after Peyton Manning played at Tennessee. It's the era of Al Lewis when he came in. And this is by Off the Hook Sports writer, former ESPN contributor Dave Hooker. And Dave has collected a nice collection of color pictures, and this book has got all full color printing inside too, so you can see the color pictures. He's got behind the scenes stories. He's talked to the players. He's looked at what happened that season, how it all came together, and even what has happened to those players and where are they now. So that's Celebrate 98 by Dave Hooker. Get out there and order your copy now.
Yeah. Also out now is the Dayang, Book 1 of the Dayang Trilogy by M.C. Howard. This is a novel. It's got CIA intrigue, some Vietnam War era storylines, and it's a very good novel. The Dayang, Book 1 of the Dayang Trilogy by M.C. Howard is available now. So get over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you get your books and grab a copy. Now, we do have a newsletter, and if you're not subscribed to it, why not? This newsletter has all the upcoming releases. It's got who's going to be on this show each week, and it's got the link to this show each week, so you just click on it from your newsletter. But it's also got all kinds of cool indie publishing world news. So get over there and get subscribed to it, and here's how you can do that.
Stay on top of these podcasts and all things Fresh Ink Group with our weekly digital newsletter, new releases, videos, stories, excerpts, interviews, and more. Sign up now on the homepage of FreshInkGroup.com and be the one who knows what's what.
Yeah, I want to go over here real quick and throw out a little note here from Verwayne Greenhoe before I forget here. We don't want to forget Verwayne. Verwayne Greenhoe, you know, he lives down in Florida. They got hammered by that hurricane. So he said, we still have less than reliable power 8 days post-hurricane and no sign of when the internet comes back up. Joy. In the meantime, I've been using my voice text app to keep working on my romance Bella. I can't post it, but it keeps me off the street corner. So, all right, stay safe, Verwayne and Lisa, and we hope you're in the audience. He said they would try to listen on their cell phone tonight, and if they are, hello, Verwayne and Lisa. Good to have you on.
Hey, hello.
All right.
All right, so we've got a series by Robert G. Willis-Croft. Originally, he did the Star Child trilogy, and we're republishing it as the Star Child saga as 4 books instead of 3, and using the Daedalus series, novellas that he wrote, is going to be book 2 in the Star Child saga. The first book in that saga, Slingshot, is out now. Go out there and order it. Get your copy. It's very cool. If you're a classic science fiction style lover, you know, like Asimov and Heinlein and Clarke and the good old days of classic sci-fi, Willis-Croft is right up in the middle of that groove, and this is a great series. So check out that book 1. We're going to have books 2, 3, and 4 out sometime in the next month or so, once we get all of our pricing and 40% discount details worked out here. That's Robert G. Willis-Croft, Slingshot. It's the first book in the Star Child saga series, out now.
All right, and we've also got out now Daddy Yo-Yo and the Legendary Marble Tournament by Janice Toney. This is a young adult, early teens, preteen book, and it's a chapter book, but it's got some cool pictures in it, and it's or illustrations, and it's a story about bullying and why bullying just sucks. So. Check that out. Now, Janice Toney, she is out there working it, too. She's doing all kinds of book signing events. She just ordered another case of books to through Fresh Ink Group, and she's going through a lot of books. So this is a good way to market yourself. If you can get book signing events at libraries or bookstores and things like that, that's a cool thing to do. And we've got a lot of authors at Fresh Ink Group that are doing these things. So Daddy Yo-Yo and the Legendary Marble Tournament by Janice Toney, that is out. If you've got children and you want them to understand that bullying sucks, grab a copy. Now, I want to do a shout-out here to a friend of the show. She's been on the show before, and we're working on her audiobook, Cheryl Carpinello. Her book, The Atlantean Horse, was awarded the 2023 Colorado Independent Publishers Association's Evie Gold Medal for young adults. The book received, gold medal. First place,
cool.
The book also received an honorable mention in the 2023 Reader's Favorite in Young Adult Mythology Fairy Tale. And her book, Grandma's Tales 3, was a finalist in the 2023 Colorado Authors League Children's category. So congratulations to Cheryl Carpinello. That's a lot of accolades there. So well done. Well done.
All right, so let's take a look at the top 25 print bestsellers from Fresh Ink Group releases this week. These are print only. We're not looking at the digital numbers, just what kind of papers out there flying around. Entering the list this week, we haven't seen this on the list in a little while, is The ABCs of Surviving Cancer, Alive, Beautiful, and Courageous by Tammy Trover. Now, Tammy Trover is a cancer survivor who wrote this book for children and families and for friends. So that people can understand, why is that boy in my class losing his hair, or what's going on with the neighbor's cancer treatments or whatever. So it's a series of poems, each one based on a letter of the alphabet, the ABCs of Surviving Cancer, and it's an affirming, beautiful little piece with Cornelius the Cancer Crocodile, helping kids and young people learn about what is this whole thing with cancer and the treatment and what to expect and stuff like that. So we're proud of that book. We're glad to see it back on the list again. This has been out 5-6 years at least. The ABCs of Surviving Cancer, Live, Beautiful, and Courageous by Tammy Trover. Then we've got Daddy Yo-Yo and the Legendary Marble Tournament, which Beem just talked about, in the hardcover edition. So the hardcover is selling well on that. And then we've got Fresh Ink Group Short Story Showcase #1. It's a collection of 60 or so short fiction pieces by a variety of different authors. We are collecting stories for Showcase #2 right now. Any of you out there who have written short fiction, send it to us, contest@freshinkgroup.com. See if you can get yourself into our next collection. We're also collecting mini memoirs. Those are essays where you tell a personal story about something true that happened and maybe something that you learned from it. How to Start and Run Your Own Food Truck Business in Tennessee has the next 2 slots. The hardcover and the paperback are neck and neck, selling the same number of copies right now. That's by A.K. Wingler. She also has 2 other How to Start Your Food Truck Business books, one for Georgia and one for Florida. Above that, Lanny Richmond, warning, no one is scared of hell until they get there. I have been there. Yeah, this is a kind of a Christian sermon book, and by he's retired, right? Retired minister, Lanny Richmond, preacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now above that, we've got Kenneth Lindquist, How to Teach Driving, Instructor's Edition. He's also got a Parents Edition. There's 2 different books here, and this is about helping young people learn how to be good, safe drivers. The Instructor's Edition is for people who want to get certified in whatever jurisdiction you're in order to become a driving ed instructor. Above that, J. Ash Looney, Figuratively Speaking, Thesaurus of Expressions and Phrases. This is a lot of fun. It's where a lot of those pat phrases and cliches that you hear, where did they come from, what did they really mean? He's got 2 word books, and both of those are selling particularly well in India right now. Above that, Larry Jorgensen. He's a historian, retired journalist, shipwrecked and rescued the city of Bangor. This is the true story about 240 1920s Chryslers being shipped across Lake Superior. Winter storm came up. The cars never made it. The crew never made it. Did people get rescued? And what happened to those cars? You're going to want to find out. Shipwrecked and Rescued by Larry Jorgensen. Now, we've got Robert McKenzie's Chair series, and Book 1 is next up on our list, The Chair, Volume 1, Lightning, Thunder, and Glory. Books 2 and 3 are out now. Number 3 is the latest release. This is a cool series. Ultimately, there's going to be 5, and it's a historical fiction based from the point of view of a chair. that was there in all the different places the story happens. David Carroll's I Won't Be Your Scapegoat, David Carroll's Homemade Social Media Blunders, hardcover edition, has now entered our list this week. Isn't that pretty cool? So it's kind of a light, fun humor book, but people are going to want the hardcover. Above that, the hardcover edition of the Dayang, book one of the Dayang trilogy. People say people don't buy hardcover novels. We've been selling them. We've got novels that the hardcovers are actually outselling the soft covers. So much for that. How to Paint an American by Andrew McGregor, the paperback edition. That's a cool novel. What's that about, Beem?
That is about a Eastern European young man who comes to America to discover what it means to be an American. And he travels the country. He's in New York City. He's in Boston. He's down in Atlanta. He's out west. He's in, I believe, in Texas. And the people that he meets, there's some rough characters there that he runs into, and then there's some good people that kind of take him under their wings. And in the end, he understands, or possibly understands, what it means to be an American.
By Andrew McGregor.
McGregor.
Another food truck business book by A.K. Wingler. This is the Florida book, paperback edition. And then above that, American Agony, the Opioid War Against Patients in Pain by Dr. Helen Burrell. This is a look at the politics behind what's going on right now in opioid enforcement and some doctors getting caught up in the system and even being put in prison. Now, above that, and doing very well right now for a book that we put out years ago, My Three Wishes, memoir of a Hawaiian dancer whose family troupe traveled the world. And that's by Kanoi Kay. Kanoi and her family became Polynesian dance troupe in Hawaii, and they, like the title says, they took the tour on the road all over the world and got to see the world, took pictures, and she wrote the story. So it's a cool book. Above that, Kenneth Lindquist again, How to Teach Driving Behind the Wheel Lesson by Lesson. Still the Instructor's Edition. That's outselling the Parents Edition, but this is the hardcover. So people want a hardcover to put on the shelf. Now, that gets us down to the top 6. Larry Jorgensen's Shipwrecked and Rescued, about those cars that never made it across Lake Superior. The paperback edition is at number 6. At number 5, I Won't Be Your Scapegoat, the paperback edition of David Carroll's look at social media blunders. New release just came out this past week, already in our top 5. Top 4, the Dayang, book one of the Dayang trilogy, the paperback edition. That's another new release that's already jumped into our top 5. And now we've got a couple of stalwarts here. Number 3, The High Road, Memories from a Long Trip by former Alabama drummer Mark Herndon, Country Music Hall of Fame drummer. Spent nearly 3 years traveling the world with a supergroup, got to be the superstar.
Nearly 30 years.
Yeah, now he's telling the story. He's telling the good parts, the bad parts, the ugly parts, the drama, and admitting the mistakes that he made as well. He takes the high road. He's not out there trying to burn people. That's by Mark Herndon. Now, top 2, Submariner, 30 Years of Hijinks and Keeping the Fleet Afloat by retired U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander Jerry Pate, with help from Robert G. Williscroft, getting these stories together. It's a memoir with 60 chapters of life above and below the sea and a whole lot of adventure. It's doing very well, Submariner by Jerry Pate. And that gets us to number 1. For the 3rd week in a row, our number 1 print bestseller is by Dr. Abigail Miriam Hamilton Hughini. There Must Be Something in the Water, anthology of the 4th generation descendants of Green Pond after the Emancipation. These are descendants of slaves who live in the Low Country, grew up in the Low Country out there in South Carolina, and then went on to do great things, become presidents of universities and leaders in industry and whatnot. So it's a profile of all of these different people with their picture and description of what they did and what they accomplished. It's a wonderful motivational piece, and it's a good bit of history as well. So congratulations, Dr. Hughini. There Must Be Something in the Water is our number 1 print bestseller.
Yeah, congratulations to all those authors. Listeners, if you've missed an episode, or you've got a favorite episode you want to hear again, or you're new to the show and you just want to see what we're all about, we've got an archive, and here's where you can find all of our past episodes.
Find your favorite show in the Voice of Indie archive on YouTube at Fresh Ink Group, StephenGees.com, BeamWeeks.com, FreshInkGroup.com, and on Spotify. And now, you can listen on iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and tune in. Just search The Voice of Indy, all one word.
Dave Hooker here, longtime Tennessee sports writer, and I know that true Tennessee fans are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the legendary 1998 Tennessee Volunteers championship season. Tell you what, in Celebrate 98, I try to bring the full-color photos and detail the transfer of power from Peyton Manning to Al Wilson, the preparation to win the first BCS national championship, the locker room dynamics, and the challenges of a team rising above deep tragedy. Key plays include interception, a fumble maybe against Arkansas, and a bit of trickeration. Also, there's that Florida game. I analyze the leadership, the strategies, and the players' commitment to each other, and share what we are still learning from this team even today. Discover what happened to those heroes of the gridiron and where they are now. Proudly published by the Fresh Ink Group, Celebrate 98 is available in all the digital forms, but you can also get your own softcover or jacketed hardcover keepsake edition from booksellers worldwide. Want an autographed edition? Go to offthehooksports.com. That's offthehooksports.com, and I'll personalize it for you. Celebrate 98 is a collector's item and a cherished gift that belongs to all fans of college football and the Tennessee Volunteers.
All right. Off the Hook Sports. Okay, we are going to bring in today's guest. Barney Smith is a writer and illustrator known for his distinctive autobiographical satirical graphic novels. His focus is on narrating his exhilarating experiences in international relief work alongside the delightful complexities of being in an intercultural marriage. Rooted in the scenic landscapes of Vermont, he's not just a cartoonist, but a proud father of 3 remarkable kids and a husband to a Nigerian runway model, which beautifully adds to the diversity of his life experiences. Welcome to the show, Barney Smith.
Hey
Barney.
Yeah, thanks for having me come on. Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, so right off the bat, how about you tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you've lived in the past, and where are you now?
Yeah, so right now I'm from Vermont, so it's the same story everybody's heard 100 times before. It's about the slightly overweight Vermont cartoonist marries Nigerian runway model. I mean, it's the same generic story everybody's heard before.
Yeah, started Jude Law, right?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I am literally living in the 90s sitcom. You know, those 90s sitcoms where you had the goofy dad married to the beautiful wife. And here's the other thing, like my mother-in-law lives with us too. So it literally is like it is a perfect recipe for a sitcom setup. And then I got the 3 kids as well. So
Does the house have a laugh track?
It should. If it doesn't, it should. I mean, I think it does. But when I leave the toilet seat up, I think it's funny, but but sometimes there's. So I believe there's a laugh track. So that's. So basically, long story short, I spent a lot of years overseas working for international relief organizations, and then I got married to my wife back in 2012. So we've been married now for 11 years. So I always kind of joke at this whole 90-day fiancé thing. There's a TV show, 90-Day Fiancé, and people are like, "There's no way that could happen in real life." It's just another example of how something that would make sense like on a TV show but doesn't happen in real life. Here's another point, is that my wife and we dated for 30 days before we got married. So, and fast forward, we've been married for 11 years. So here's the thing, my wife is amazing. Yeah, my wife is amazing, and there is no way I could keep up pretending I'm cool for like 30 days. After that, she would have found out how much of a goofball I was if we did it any longer. So I had to, I married up, as I like to say. I definitely married up. So, yeah. But, yeah.
All right.
Well, now you mentioned that you've done some of the traveling, Peace Corps, Doctors Without Borders, things like that. I mean, did this come out of your schooling? Where'd you go to school, and then how'd you kind of transition into that kind of stuff?
So it was 1998. I was in art school. I graduated. I got graduated with a fine art degree. So I did what anybody else would do in 1998. Graduated from art school. 1998 was the internet bubble era. So everybody made $1 million by just creating their own .com, website. And so what I did is like what any normal art student would do. So I joined the Peace Corps. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. I am not ready for the real life. So I ended up being in the Peace Corps you're supposed to be in there for 2 years, but I ended up being there for 4 years. And after being there for 4 years, I still had the bug of wanting to go out in the world. So that's when I ended up working for international relief organizations, one of them being Doctors Without Borders. So chronologically speaking, guys, I was in Pakistan after the earthquake. Then I was in the Philippines for about a year doing typhoon relief work. And then after that, I was in South Sudan working there as they're working on their independence push. And then I was in Zimbabwe during the cholera outbreak. Then I was in Uganda working for an HIV clinic in northern Uganda. And then I was in Libya during the revolution, dodging bullets. And then after that, I was in Lagos in Nigeria, working in an urban maternity health care clinic. And that's where I met my wife. And I figured, 15 years living out of a suitcase was long enough, so I decided to come back home to Vermont. And that's where I was there for well on about 11 years or so. So then I was working for internet, and then I was working for about 10 years or so doing working for a nonprofit that was providing advocacy work for people living with disabilities. So,
all right. Now, your childhood, growing up, what kind of kid were you? Were you into reading and writing? Were you into the comics? Because we're going to get to that here in a little bit later, what it is that you do. Did this all start in childhood, or did this come later?
So yeah, it was one of those things where I would always draw. I loved drawing, and it was one of those things where it was just what was cool about it. It just kind of like also kind of like gave birth to the concept of creating and world building and all that kind of stuff. But it really kind of started from just drawing and making my own comic books when I was a kid. I was pretty fun because I actually stumbled upon some of my old comic books that I made when I was 10, and they look just like anyone else who was in their 40s who discovered their comic books when they drew and they were 10. There is nothing that is outrageous or amazing about it. It looks like it's a 10-year-old who thought they could draw comic books, and I have them. It's pretty fun because some of them were all based off of things I had in my backyard, like superheroes I invented. I invented up one that was called The Ultimate Shock, and it was this guy that had a motorcycle helmet on and a baseball bat. Because you know why? In my house we had a motorcycle helmet and a baseball bat, and then I had this other guy his job was he threw frisbees, and I thought that was amazing. So I was like making up my own superhero characters based off of the stuff I had floating around the backyard.
Well, yeah, that's, kind of like, that's basically the foundation, though. That's where you get started. I mean, all the writers that have been on this show, they talk about, the short stories and whatnot that they wrote as kids and how they wouldn't dare publish them now, but that's where you get to start from, and that you can continue that into adulthood, that tells you something.
Right, yeah, exactly. And it is so fun just seeing that now and just seeing what kind of sparks you're able to grab a hold of when you're a kid that you'd be able to go on, because there's artists and writers that are out there who are still sticking to some of their childhood inventions that they have and really pushing it, thinking, yeah, this is something I'm still going to face, and this is something I still want to work with. So that's where some people to this day, if you look at some Kickstarters that have started, it's based off of somebody who said, yeah, this was this character I created when I was 10, and I'm still world building with them. So it's you never know what ends up sticking and which ones end up kind of forgetting about.
Yeah, as you get mature too, you can take ideas and thoughts and feelings, impressions, and all that kind of stuff, and just keep adding that maturity to them. Right now, I'm working on 2 music compositions where I'm using themes that I wrote when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I just got to thinking about them one day and went back and revisited those and thought, well, those sound nice. Those sound really cool. What I'm doing with them now is stuff that I couldn't do when I was 11 and 12. See, it's a whole different thing. You've got that maturity there. You can see the possibilities and open them up. So I could even see where you could go back and take that Frisbee feller and turn him into a real cool, compete with Spider-Man kind of a character these days, now that you know more about what you're doing with him. So you never know.
Right. And it's some of it, too, it's like, here's the thing. Here's one of my things that's kind of always bugged me, is that the idea of so I got 3 kids. I got a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And the 9-year-old, she watched a lot of PJ Masks. Are you guys familiar with PJ Masks, the cartoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, vaguely.
Well, here's the thing that bugs me about it is that there is plenty of I'm one of those people that just wants to know the origin story. What's the origin story? And I have been reading and trying to find out, and nobody knows what the origin story is of those the PJ Masks kids. They're where's the adults at with this? Like there just happens to be seems to be a giant tower in the middle of the city, and there's not one adult who asks where did that giant tower come from? So it's like, there's no wiki. I've been looking for a Wikipedia article about PJ Masks and the origin of PJ Masks. There's nothing there. Here it is. I'm 46. I just want to know the source. I want to know the origin story. Maybe it's the fact that we've all kind of grown up with knowing origin stories that I'm just kind of I'm just kind of bugged by where did this where did these superhero kids come from? I have no idea.
Yeah, I've got my niece, her kids, so they're my grand nieces and nephew. They love. Well, I don't know about now; they're getting a little older, but they love the PJ Masks stuff. Yeah, I remember one year for Christmas, that's all they wanted was PJ Masks stuff.
Yeah, I've gone on the Wikipedia articles and YouTube videos trying to find the answer to what's the origin of PJ Masks, and no, can't find it. I mean, all the other kids shows, there's the origin stories of them, but no, nothing for PJ Masks. So yeah.
Well, maybe you need to write it.
Listeners out there, let's do some fan fiction on the origin story of PJ Masks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay, we are talking to Barney Smith, and we are going to take a commercial break, and we will be right back.
I'm David Carroll, and I'm proud of my recent books, Chattanooga Radio and Television, Volunteer Bama Dog, and Hello Chattanooga, famous people who have visited the Tennessee Valley. Like many folks, I spend too much time on social media, but I put that time to good use. For years, I've been collecting social media misspellings, misinterpretations, and other mishaps, from tweets, text messages, even the signs you see at stores and on the highways. I've collected the funniest foul-ups in my latest book, I Won't Be Your Scapegoat, David Carroll's homemade social media blunders. I top them off with my own snarky comments, and they're illustrated by a talented artist, my friend Mike Salter. There are a lot of laugh-out-loud moments in the book, more than 400 of them. We all make mistakes, and sure, you can blame it on spell check, but maybe, just maybe, we didn't pay enough attention in English class. Either way, this book will bring a smile to your face or to the face of someone you love. We can all agree what the world needs now is laughter, and lots of it. I Won't Be Your Scapegoat, proudly published by Fresh Ink Group in softcover, jacketed hardcover, and all ebook formats.
Yeah, funny book.
That does sound really fun.
Okay, I think Stephen might be having a little issue with his microphone, but we'll just that'll get sorted out. This is live radio, live podcast. Now, let's talk a little bit about your family. You say you've got a wife and kids. How do you balance being a dad and working on the comics and your job and all that stuff? How do you strike that balance?
So it's really interesting. Is that so as of recent, it's because I think about what my that your priorities are always going to be, family. It's because at the end of the day, and this is the thing, not to get overly philosophical, because at the end of the day, if you quit your job, they'll replace you in a week. It's like if you, and so your irreplaceable position is being a father and being a husband and being. So I know that my priority, the time that I want to spend, is really with my kids first and foremost. My job only has me 8 hours a day. And I don't give them. I'm one of those people that if I get a text message from my boss at at 8 p.m., I don't answer it. I'm like, nope, I don't. I'm with my kids now. You know what? And it's one of those things. Just having the confidence. It's having the confidence in yourself to put those boundaries in. I think is really important. And the time that I actually put into my kids is when I am not at my creative best. So I'm really creative in the morning, and my kids are usually asleep in the morning. So what I do is I actually do a lot of my creative work in the morning when everybody's asleep, and that's usually some of the best time because, at the end of the day when I come back from work and I'm tired, that's the best time to sit down and play a board game with your kids, or just sit down and watch, cartoons with your kids. And that's the other thing too, Beem. And then Steve, and that's like kids have, when we were kids. I'm a Gen Xer. When I was a kid, my parents, the old adage of my parents always saying, when I was your age, we had to, walk uphill both ways in the snow to go to school and blah blah blah. And the thing is, what I love about being a Gen Xer is that we can, in reality, say things that Gen Zers and younger kids don't understand how good they have it.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, you could only watch cartoons once a week.
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning was the only time you got to watch cartoons. There was no channel that was dedicated to cartoons. There's nothing like that when we were kids. And the other thing too is like TV on demand. There were, it's like music on demand.
Yeah.
The only time you could listen to a song is that you had to pick up the phone, call the radio station, and request it, and hope they played it. And then you sat by the radio with your tape deck and was able to hit record to try to get that. And, unless you're the Rockefellers, you can buy your own tape, your own cassette. We never, I stumbled upon Beem. It was so cool. I actually ended up stumbling upon an old box. Same box, actually, I found the old comic books I made in. Old box of all the mixtapes I made off of the radio.
Oh, I remember those.
I had such a fun time listening to those. And, oh, man, my goodness. I had such a blast. So it's and so that was part of what it meant. So just being able to just hang out with my kiddos, my kids, and they're at that age now where my oldest is 9, so they're still not old enough where I can like really embarrass them online, like embarrass them yet with their friends yet, because they're not at that age yet. But I can't wait. Oh man, I can't wait until I can just like playfully embarrass them in front of their kids or in front of their classmates. Those are the things I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, talking about the streaming and movies and TV on demand and all of that. I remember, I'm 56, so I was growing up in the 70s when we didn't even have VCRs yet, and so if you missed your favorite show, you had to wait till summer reruns to watch it.
Oh, yeah.
You had to be in the house at that time to watch it.
Right. Yeah, it was gone forever. That's right. Yep.
Yeah. All right, we are talking with...
We're talking to Barney Smith.
Barney Smith.
Call in, people.
Yeah, so we are going to take another quick little commercial break, and we will be right back.
In the days leading up to her departure on the yacht the Diane, Catherine Howell had a sixth sense revelation that the U.S. government would attempt to take her out before she could return to the United States. Thus begins a web of intrigue involving the CIA, the military, the alleged stillborn birth of her infant son, and the loss of her husband in Vietnam. But is he truly dead? Catherine's sixth sense tells her the man is still alive, and they very nearly cross paths. Catherine's story should be told with caution, as one never knows which government agency is listening to your phone calls, reading your mail, or following you wherever you go. How did Catherine end up living on a yacht with a CIA agent? Will she ever discover the truth? Grab your copy of The Diane, Book 1 of the Diane Trilogy by M.C. Howell, in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide. The Diane by M.C. Howell.
All right. Yeah, that's a cool book.
All right. You got something on Twitter?
Yeah, we do. We have Erwin Greenhow has just dropped in with a comment. He said, I'm using my wife's phone to listen and mine to drop this note. My son has been an excellent artist, has done a series of storyline of strange talking creatures, posting them on military websites. He retired after 22 years and is looking at posting them on my servers. Okay, yeah. I believe we've had Verwayne on the show a few times, and he's talked about that his son is an artist as well, yeah. So there you go.
All right, so Barney, you're involved in a couple of FM radio stations, and you've just acquired one about a week ago. What's going on with radio and internet, podcasting? What do you got your fingers in?
Yeah, I know. My third career now. I just started my third career, and that's, as I said, I was working international relief, and then I was working doing disability advocacy work for 10 years or so, and the opportunity to actually end up buying a terrestrial radio station came over because our local radio station where I'm from, the owner is second generation there. His dad is the one that created the radio station back in the early 70s, and now the son. He's like 65, and he wants to spend time with his grandkids. So all the work I've done over internet radio and podcasting over the last several years, I decided to take that, and so I just recently got the FCC license to take over the radio station. So I'm pretty darn excited about this new part of my career now. So yeah, it's actually two FM frequencies and one AM frequency. So it's technically 3, but it's all country western music. So I got to learn about country western.
Country western.
Yeah, I know.
I call for a programming change. Go metal, heavy metal, 80s metal.
You don't want to upset the advertisers right now, which is pretty cool because the more I learn about it, and I've been in it now for about 6 months, is that your customers are actually the advertisers, But the advertisers' customers are your listeners. So it's kind of a fun balance on making sure that you're playing your ads for the advertisers' things. And the other cool thing too about radio is that it's and you know this with you know in the podcast radio is that a radio is that you're touching someone from a distance in a way. There's this sense of being able to be intimate, to talk to somebody from far away, and you create. There's such a great, amazing level of community, and the podcasting has brought radio back. It's the whole idea about video killed the radio star, and there's a really funny cartoon where it shows this guy that's labeled video, and he's like burying in the grave it says radio star, and then it says 30 years later, and there's this guy with a T-shirt that says podcast, and he's like digging up the radio star, like coming back. So like radio's coming back. It's really fun. It's amazing because the advent of like live stream and like on-demand TV has now actually been a detriment to live TV and live stream as well, streaming television, because now people started to passively watch TV in the background, and so what's happened is actually expanded out the idea of radio and podcasting has grown because of that. Is because now people just realize that they like hearing stuff in the background, and the sound is way more important than visuals. Because I give you an example. It's like if you turn on a television and you turn off the volume, do you care what's happening on the TV? But if you're in the other room, you have a TV on, and you might hear something that makes you want to come in the other room and watch what's happening. It's because sound actually engages us a heck of a lot more than visualization does. So that's where, you know, the work that the two of you are doing now with podcasting, is exponentially so much greater in creating community than the visual is going to. So.
Yeah, these days people are spending a lot more time in their cars, in vehicles as well. And the capabilities in those vehicles for accessing content like satellite radio and whatnot too. So, and that's primarily audio. And that's creating great opportunities for audio content to be growing in popularity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does allow people to just really share some things more. Because here's the thing: is like, if you hear a really good podcast, you can say, "Oh, you guys listen to this podcast." You're more apt to do that and say, "Oh, have you watched this new Netflix show?" Or you've watched this, you're like, I don't have time to watch a show right now. Like, it's like I've rarely heard everybody say, I don't have time to listen to the radio right now. I've never heard anybody say that. Or I've always heard people say, if they say that, it's going to be, I don't have time to watch this right now. When am I going to watch that? Because you have to engage in it visually. So that's where the ability of being able to connect to people through sound is so much more prevalent now.
Yeah, I worked in an office for years back in the 90s, and you know, I'd be behind my desk with my headphones on listening to the radio all day long. You know, in the morning it was music, and then in the afternoons it was talk radio.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We are going to take another quick break here. We are talking with Barney Smith, and we are going to start talking about we've got a caller, too, so we're going to take the call here when we come back out of this break, and we will start talking about the actual work you do.
Submariner, 30 years of hijinks and keeping the fleet afloat. Jerry Pate's semi-autobiographical collection of 60 stories recounts his 30 years in and around the U.S. Navy submarine fleet, ranging from lighthearted to wrenching. All are poignant inside looks at naval operations rarely seen by outsiders. Topics include the real story behind the shuttle Challenger tragedy, risking his own life underwater, discovering a Soviet spy living across the street, surviving when an engine ignites, critical missions, and the everyday lives of men and women of the fleet. Compiled by author Robert G. Williscroft and proudly published by Fresh Ink Group. Submariner is available worldwide in hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats. Dive into Submariner for hijinks and breathtaking adventure with this poignant memoir by a true American hero.
All right. We are going to go to the phone line here and take this call. Hello, Helen. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, great. How are you guys? Listen, Mr. Smith.
Hi, Helen.
You've lived a kind of very adventurous, diverse life. That's wonderful. Can I ask a question? How do your two older children respond to your cartoons?
That's a great question, Helen. Thank you for asking. I love sitting down with my kids and actually end up drawing, and it's giving them the sense of drawing with them is super fun. And as a matter of fact, we always say that, on a school night they can read, but then on a weekend night, like on a Friday or Saturday night, then we let them stay up a little bit later so they can draw. So creating the sense of being able to draw as as almost a reward, because that makes it a bit more fun, and especially it's a unifying factor having them sit together. I have my oldest daughter loves princesses. She's at the age of princesses, so she'll draw princesses all day. And then I have my middle child. My middle daughter. She loves superheroes, and so she will draw superheroes all day. And then I have a 3-year-old who loves drawing on the walls.
Yeah. Are they going to be like you, Daddy? Are they going to be cartoonist as well?
Yes, yeah. I would not be opposed for them. I would not be opposed if they started drawing cartoons. Absolutely not. That'd be fine. That'd be fantastic.
Oh, very interesting. Very unique life you have. I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for calling in, Helen.
Thank you, Helen.
Okay, good night.
Always good to hear from you.
Okay, good night.
So, Barney, you've got a Kickstarter program going right now?
I do. I actually have a book of called Dadder Jokes. So I did a book last year called Dad Jokes, and it was a kind of a culmination of all the jokes I would post every day, and they're curated jokes and one-liners of dad jokes that I would find over the internet and tweak them a little bit, and also find some old jokes that I'm a huge fan of old-time radio, so I had all these old jokes from from Charlie McCarthy to George Allen and Gracie Burns. George Burns and Gracie Allen. And yes. And then I've been able to so I put all those kind of tweak them, all those jokes together, and I put them in the form of a book. The cool thing about this book too, Stephen and Beem, is that it's the only one I've ever read. The only one I've ever found that's actually full color. I've never seen a joke book that was fully colored. The second thing about this book that I like is that invariably, if you buy a joke book, you're going to end up finding some jokes in there that might be a bit misogynistic or racist, or will make fun of somebody's intellectual capacities, or make fun of a culture of people. And I love the fact that I was able to put together a book with over 500 jokes that is completely safe. That they're all wow. The jokes in there are completely safe. And
that's an accomplishment.
It is, because I honestly believe that humor needs to be a unifier. It should not be a divider. I really believe that humor itself is when you actually have a joke that's misogynistic or racist or sexist, it's a form of bullying as far as I'm concerned. And the fact is that a joke should be fun for everybody, and it should not create a culture of an other, making fun of other people. And what I love about this book, too, is that, and here's the other thing, too, joke books make the best gifts. There's great ways to give it. But here's the thing. If you have a joke book that actually has some racist jokes or sexist jokes in there, and there's two types of gifts. The first gift you give is a gift you're giving to somebody who you feel that they're going to like. The other type of gift you give is when you kind of provide what you feel is like your own personal values. Say, for instance, you're a grandmother and you give a savings bond to your 10-year-old. 10-year-old doesn't. Well, yeah, thanks. But it's like the point of it being is like you give them that because that's a value that the grandparent feels is valuable. If you give like a doll to a child or an action figure to a child, you're showing, I think you like this. So the point is like if you buy a joke book that has some racist jokes or sexist jokes in there, basically you're invariably saying something by accident, two things, unless you knew that they're in there. It's like, one, you find this humor funny, or two, you're saying, I find this humor funny. That's why I love the joke book I put together. Fully colored cartoon. There's cartoons on every page of it. The fact that I like about it is that it's fully safe. So you can basically get this joke book for anyone without being afraid that it might be something in there that might not be funny or might not be appropriate. So what I love about this book, I said I have a girl, my 6-year-old. She's in first grade. She brought the joke book to school. At first, the teacher was like, "What is this?" And she took it away because it was free reading time where everybody could read their own book. And then the teacher took it and flipped through it and started laughing, cracking up, and the kids were looking up, and the teacher's like, this book's fine, and like gave it back to my daughter. My brother works at a stone quarry, so he works at like a construction site, and he has lunch. He has lunch out of a lunchbox, and his coworker's like, "Yo, break out that book your brother made. That's pretty funny." So like all these old guys are sitting there reading it. My mother is a minister at church. She's a church minister, and she has the book at church. Like it's a completely fine and safe joke for anybody to have. That's what makes it the perfect gift as well. And so that's one of the things that I love about the book is that it's fully colored, it's completely safe. Some of the jokes actually are in there that about 5% of the jokes in there are actually jokes that I kind of invented. It's really fun, and I actually saw one of my own jokes that were I've seen out in the wild a couple times, which is pretty cool. I'll give you one example. One example of one joke that I invented I saw actually out in the wild, which was pretty cool. So I live in Vermont, and then here in Vermont, it's rural enough where you can see we see deer, but it's uncommon enough where you mentioned that you see a deer. And I actually, dropping my kiddo off at school back in 2019, it was pre-COVID, I saw a deer jump over the snowbank and kind of head off and jump across the road. And I came back home and I told my wife, I said, "Oh, I saw a deer on the way to school today." And my wife looks at me and she says, "How do you know it was going to school?" And and I said, I looked at her and go, "That's really funny." And I actually tweaked it and I actually made it into a joke. And I've seen that joke in the wild a couple times. And it's so fun to see a joke that I made up that like show up. It's almost like an homage in a way to the Groucho Marx joke of I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How I get in my pajamas, I'll never know. Like it's almost reminiscent to that. A few jokes
people are
I was
always
able to
quoting
kind of...
that Shakespeare fella, but Shakespeare doesn't have any dad jokes.
And
so
like
what's the Kickstarter doing, Barney? What are you trying to finance paying for publishing the book, or what's the Kickstarter?
So the good question. The Kickstarter is true. It's already funded, so I actually hit my goal, so which is good. Which means So this sequel book called Dadder Jokes is going to be available. I'm really using, because I did my own artwork. I don't have artists to pay. I had three of my artist friends that I paid to do some variant covers for it. So what I'm using for that book is utilizing it as a pre-order in a way. So for those that want to get the book, this is the best time to get it for probably the cheapest the cheapest point you can get it at where it stands right now. You can get some exclusive offers on there as well for it. I've got some really cool bookmarks that are going to be exclusive to the Kickstarter as well, and so I'm really utilizing it as a pre-order to get pay for to get people to have the ability to be able to buy the book at cost before it goes on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and when they get a hold of it, as you know, the price will be higher, through that.
So what was your goal? Was it a dollar amount or so many copies, or what did you have?
Yeah, I set the goal for $700, and we're almost at 1,000 right now.
Wow.
So
cool.
I got some stretch goals in place.
Barney, this is the first time I've heard of somebody doing a crowdfunding to pay for a book and have it succeed. I've known a couple of people who've tried, but they never got anywhere near their goal.
Yeah. No, I've been very fortunate. Yeah, I've been really fortunate. And also too, I just really think the time is ripe. I mean, it's just people need some humor in their lives right now, and they need some humor that they know that's reliable. And it's in the piece about just the dad joke itself is it's what I love about the idea of the dad joke. And here's my working theory, and this is something that I've been stewing on, is that the term dad joke actually started the first time the word dad joke was ever listed in pop culture was in 1987. It was an op-ed piece in the Gettysburg Gazette where somebody wrote, don't knock the dad joke or something along those lines. And here's the thing about the dad joke. So what I love about this is, like, the more I research it, and I've been doing research on this, is that mid-80s earlier, so the mid-80s earlier to the 70s to the 60s, the role of the father figure, the role of the paternal figure in the household was always someone who was stern and who was wise. The father never had a personality other than the fact of being the one that gave wisdom at the end of the episode or something, or being stern throughout the entire thing. Even the movies, the father really never had a personality. Any time that you actually had some sort of father figure, he was always the straight man in the thing. If there was any funny guy, chances were he was the uncle, or he was the neighbor, or he was single. He didn't have kids.
Well, Danny Thomas was funny on Make Room for Daddy.
Yeah.
He was. So Danny Thomas, he was a comedian. So if you think about it, like even you think the Dick Van Dyke Show, it was. They did goofy things, but he wasn't. Funny things happened to him, to Danny Thomas, but funny things happened around him, but he wasn't. He was always the one. Also had that sense of wisdom about him. He was always that. But you think about the early '80s, where you had Family Ties, or if you had any of the shows where there was a dad in there, or even like Happy Days. Like the father, funny things happened around them, but it wasn't full on like goofy for being goofy. And it wasn't until around starting to get the late '80s when you had the Cosby Show first started, where Cliff Huxtable, as you know, Bill Cosby was a comedian, and he was also kind of wise, but he was kind of there were starting to be some cracks in the foundation of what a father figure would be. When you had Full House, you had Danny Tanner, who was the father, but he wasn't goofy. Goofy things that happened. He had he was eccentric. He had some personality quips about himself, but he had Uncle Jesse and Joey, who were father figures. They were father adjacent figures who could be goofy. And it wasn't really until full on where you actually saw the Home Improvement, where Tim Taylor, Tim Allen's character, was just completely goofy. And then it opened up the whole early 90s. And all the early 90s, all of a sudden you had full-on goofy dads. So what happened was, and this is my working theory here, is that you had the greatest generation gave birth to the baby boomers, who then the baby boomers gave birth to the Gen Xers, and the Gen X year, the first year, it's generally speaking, the first year of Gen Xers was in 1966. So in 1966, fast forward 20 years later, 1986, 1987, is when you started to having the first era of the Gen Xers to be an adult, started to be adults. And when that happened, that's when I was a kid, for instance, when I was a kid in the 80s, you saw a man in their 40s would go to a comic book shop. You would buy comic books in the 80s. They would put them in paper bags because people did not want to be seen buying comic books when they were adults. There was almost a sense of shame in the idea of I don't want anyone to know that I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, or I don't want anyone to know that I'm, playing video games, or any of the stuff that happened when people were adults. It wasn't until the 80s, like the late 80s to the early 90s, when you started allowing people to say, you know what, it's okay to like things. It's okay to like video games. It's okay to like comic books. It's okay to do things. So all that happened with the idea of the dad joke happened around that same time, where the idea of allowing a dad to be goofy, allowing the dad to be funny, allowing the father figure, to have a personality within the home, allowing the father to have fun. And that's that's when it really kind of started, was happening, is where the advent of the dad joke really opened it up to allow father figures and parents and dads to have fun as an adult. And there's that piece of it where there is that piece of the fact of dad, it's okay for dads to, and this is a lesson that I love about the dad joke. It teaches kids it's okay to be funny. It's okay to be embarrassed. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be human. And that's really what I love about what the cultural the cultural dialogue and the cultural representation of what a dad joke is it allows humor in the family, and allows every person in the family to do something fun, and then taking apart what the pre-understood and cultural expectations of what a father is from the 50s and 60s and the 70s, and in the 80s as well, breaking it open in the 90s and the 21st century, allows the mother figure to be the breadwinner. It allows kids to take on different roles, because the fact is that taking apart the preconceived notions of what a father is opens that up, and that really comes down to
stop right there. Okay, we're going to stop right there. We have to take another commercial break, but very interesting. We are talking with writer and illustrator Barney Smith, and we will be right back.
More than 6,000 shipwrecks have been recorded on the Great Lakes, but only one offers a true life adventure, like the 1926 rescue of the city of Bangor off the Keweenaw Peninsula in Upper Michigan. A fierce November storm tossed the ship with a crew of 23 and 240 new Chrysler automobiles onto a Lake Superior reef. For the first time, Shipwrecked and Rescued, Cars and Crew tells the near-tragic story of the deep snow and near-zero temperatures. Journalist and historian Larry Jorgensen's detailed research and collection of historical photos chronicles what happened, introduces the key players, and finally reveals the fate of those collectors' prizes in the century since. Proudly published by Fresh Ink Group, Shipwrecked and Rescued is available worldwide in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats.
All right. We are going to jump over here to Twitter. Robert McKenzie, the author of the Chair series. Earlier, you were talking about the radio stations that you bought, and he chimed in with, he said, I'd listen to Beaker Street in Little Rock, Arkansas, AM KAAY, and WLS Chicago, the big one, which could be heard throughout the Midwest and beyond. I could hear them in Houston in the summer of 1975, in Mobile, Alabama, on the old US 90 at the drawbridge. Yeah, a lot of people remember WLS.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So thanks a lot for diving in.
Barney,
go ahead.
You got a couple of other books here that we want to talk about before we run out of time. We're getting low here, Barney. 2 years, a satirical Peace Corps graphic novel. What's that about?
So basically, what I did is, like, when I was in the Peace Corps, I actually, you know how Joseph Heller wrote Catch-22, almost as a therapy of the satire of the work that he did when he was working when he was in the military. And basically 2 years was basically my Catch-22. Is basically my satire of the work I did in the Peace Corps. In order to make it universal, I ended up having it take place on Mars. That's why I call it like a satirical sci-fi, basically. So, yeah.
Okay. What's Relief, Volume 1?
And yeah, so Relief Volume 1, and I already, Volume 2 is almost out. That's kind of like the sequel to that, and that was based off of my work I did for Doctors Without Borders. And that also takes place on Mars, and also Volume 2 takes place on Venus. And it's also it's an homage and in a response to the work I did also for doing international relief work. And then Lion and Dove, which is the third one, is basically, as I mentioned, is that it's as I said, I kind of live a 90s sitcom with the fact that, like, I'm kind of like the goofy, slightly overweight Vermont cartoonist marries Nigerian runway model. When you see those 90s, sitcoms of, like, there's no way that beautiful woman would marry that guy. But you know what? It's true. I'm a proof that, beautiful women do marry, the goofy guys. And you know what, as I say, beauty fades, intelligence can get stagnant, but humor never goes out of style. So the point is, like, I make her laugh, and that's the reason why we've been married for 11 years now, is because I've been able to keep her entertained. And so what Lion and Dove is basically, it's almost like a graphic novel version, sitcom version of our relationship, but it's fictionalized. So it's like the first one on there is like the first chapter on there is when we first got married. She wanted the trademark brand cereal. I was like, no, I'm buying the generic brand. They taste exactly the same. I'm not doing that. And so of course, when I went down, I bought the generic brand of cereal. I brought it home. She was livid. I'm like, it tastes the same, and she's like, no, it doesn't. And so I was going into it. It's so funny. It was almost exactly like a real, like a sitcom situation. So what I ended up doing was buying one box of the brand name cereal, and then I would buy the generic brand, and I would just kept replacing, and I just kept putting the generic brand cereal in the real box. And of course, just like any TV show, I get caught at the end of the episode, and I'm like. And so that was that whole situation. So it's all those kind of stories that are in there in Lion and Dove. It's such a fun graphic novel. So definitely check that out.
It sounds fun, but you've got it labeled Volume 1. Are you going to continue it?
Oh yeah, no, I'm already done. Yeah, so there is Volume 2. I'm already done about 60 pages of Volume 2 already.
All right. The thing about the cereal box, it reminds me of some years ago I was watching this documentary, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but it was nightlife in China, in Beijing. They had these clubs. The kids over there, the younger people, are really into American stuff. At least they were back then. Levi's blue jeans, Budweiser beer, and Marlboro cigarettes. And what they used to do, because the Marlboro cigarettes were kind of pricey, they would buy a pack of it, smoke those, and then get the cheaper Chinese brand and put them in the box. So you'd have a Marlboro box with the cheaper Chinese brand just because it was a status thing. But that's what kind of reminded me of that. Now, you got people that work with you on some of this stuff. Do you want to give a shout out to anybody that's involved with us?
I would. Yeah, definitely. I would give a shout out to one of my for my Kickstarter. I have three of my artist friends have done covers for me. One's Mark Gagne. He is he's a children's book author and artist who actually has an agent that he works with. He's had some published books. I had Brian Ballinger, who is also a published children's book writer who has an agent that he works with. And then I have Dirk Stanley, who is the other one who did the cover for me, and he actually has published about almost 30 role-playing games. He does tabletop role-playing games. He makes his own games. And just wanted to, definitely shout out to those three for helping me out on doing the covers for my Dad or Joke book.
All right.
Cool. Now, do you have any examples of good fan reactions, fan feedback, where you met a fan at an event or got a fan letter or, a review or something that was very poignant to you?
A lot of them are responses mostly also too is to my podcast, because I have a podcast called Story Comment Presents, and I actually have every 100 episodes I interview another Barney Smith. It's like on things I do, and I just interviewed a Barney Smith who is a Grammy Award nominee, the classical music conductor from Great Britain, and he's got 250,000 downloads on his Spotify account. He's got 22,000 monthly listeners, and wow. Some of the best things I heard from is I was able to ask him some questions, and he said, "I've never been asked that before. That is a really good question." And I love, there's some sense of humility in knowing that I can, have that genuine curiosity when it comes to asking questions, and I think that was pretty heartfelt for me, is when, after the fact, he said, you asked some really good questions. Thank you. So that'd be something that I was kind of proud of, as somebody that was impressed with my question asking.
All right. Diatribes on Bluey show and Fantastic Four. What's this all about?
So I for anybody that's a parent or age, the Bluey show, for anybody that watches Bluey, that is an amazing show. That's one of those things where they're so, it's, for those that know, that's basically, if you're watching an episode of Bluey, which is this kid's cartoon, but there's so much poignance in it. It's basically the equivalent of the first 5 minutes of Up and the last 5 minutes of Iron Giant. It is such great writing. Oh my goodness. If anybody wants to, I would Google, just go ahead and Google top 10 best Bluey episodes, and you'll watch those, and you'll just be adult crying, slobbering crying, because there's such great episodes done. So definitely check out Bluey on that. So, and I'll save my my Fantastic Four diatribe for next time when I come on.
Okay.
All right. We've been talking to Barney Smith. He writes and draws comics. He writes dad's books, and he's got his own publishing company. So, Barney, how do people find you, follow you, contact you, see you on social media? What are your handles? You got a URL, website, blog? Where are you?
Oh, wow, that's great questions. I am. You can find me at storycomic.com. On there, you have all my all my podcasts are on there. All my socials are on there as well. So my Twitter and my Instagram, my Blue Sky, my Threads, my Instagram. I said that already. Twitter, all the stuff is right on there. As you go, storycomic.com.
Okay.
All right. You got any handles on social media like Twitter or Facebook, or how do people find you there?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Twitter and Facebook as well. It's on there as well, and it has Story Comic. So you just type in Story Comic. You can even go to storycomic.com, and then all the links are there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just shared it on Twitter too. So.
Yeah, we've enjoyed having you on the show, Barney, and listeners. We appreciate you coming in and participating on Twitter and calling in. Next week, we're going to have C.J. Peterson. She's a highly successful, popular author and also the co-host of the Book World podcast. And who we got after that, Beem?
And the week after that, we have her co-host from the Book World podcast, Michael Scott Clifton. They've both been on before, but we're going to bring them back because they've got new works coming out and whatnot, and we're just going to catch up with them. And after that,
we're going to be traveling for 2 weeks, so we're going to run 2 encore presentations. The first one is going to be a tribute of the interview we did with Caleb Pirtle. He's a very popular Texas author, and we just lost Caleb a few weeks back, and the whole writing community is mourning his loss, and the reading community is as well. So we're going to rerun that episode and revisit with Caleb again.
And the following week, we're going to have a rerun of Carlisle Toms, who is very healthy and still very much with us. He was just a fun interview, and so we're going to rerun that one. And following that,
then we're going musical, indie music again with Wide Track, the Tippins. That's Ron and Zach, father and son, who have their own band up in Michigan, and they're putting out some new music, got a new album, got some great stuff going, and they're always a fun interview. So we're going to talk to the Tippins of Wide Track. Then after that,
if you enjoyed tonight's show with Barney Smith, we've got Dan Price and Casey Allen, and these guys work on comic books and graphic novels and whatnot. So we're going to have them on a few weeks down the road. And after that,
Zeta Alfaro. She's an independent musician and an indie author. She's got a novel out. She's got an album out. We're going to be talking about music and writing.
And then after that, it's going to be Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports, and the author of Celebrate 98, which you heard the commercial for tonight. So we are booked clean into November. So
yeah. All right.
Mark,
so we're going to play a couple more commercials on our way out. And again, thanks, Barney Smith, for being on the show. And that's storycomic.com.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. We'll see everybody next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
In the wake of September 11th, a man who grew up with his mother in Eastern European brothels comes to New York City searching for an adventure, identity, and home. The USA has other plans for him, though. It'll give him what he wants for a price. A series of imposed quests drives our beleaguered hero through America's dark heart, from New York to Boston to a Walmart on the outskirts of Atlanta, where he finds and spreads damnation and salvation while working the night shift. Published worldwide by Fresh Ink Group, grab your copy of Andrew McGregor's How to Paint an American in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats. How to Paint an American.
Hey writers, got a short story looking for a prestigious anthology that will showcase your work alongside other top authors? Or maybe you've experienced a moment worth sharing, perhaps with some poignant meaning we could all appreciate. Fresh Ink Group is accepting submissions for our second and third volumes of the Fresh Ink Group Short Story Showcase to be released in hardcover, softcover, and all major ebook formats worldwide. There are no fees to enter. Winners are not only published, but are invited to become members with their own dashboard in the FreshInkGroup.com website. Head over to FreshInkGroup.com's Contests tab to learn more. Then grease up the old Underwood and get those shorts down so you can get your entries in sooner than later. And you readers, discover 49 wondrous tales already released in the Fresh Ink Group Short Story Showcase #1, available now in all formats worldwide.
You've been a part of Voice of Indy, a production of Fresh Ink Group. Spread the word, support our guests, then find us at FreshInkGroup.com and be sure to hashtag Fresh Ink Group.